He, a solitary tycoon who hated Christmas, haunted by the loss of his family. She, pregnant and abandoned with nowhere to go on Christmas Eve. At a charity shelter, he sees her, and her desolation strikes him. Moved by compassion, Arthur invites her to spend Christmas at his mansion, offering her refuge and resources for her and the baby. It's not just charity, it's a deep desire to give her the family he lost. Prepare for a twist where society and the past will try to destroy the new family, but true love will prove that Christmas can bring the greatest of miracles. Watch this story to the end. You'll be amazed. If you like stories of love and romance, subscribe to this channel, leave a comment. We post videos like this every day. Continuing. Mariana Varela pulled her thin coat tighter, trying to protect herself from the biting December wind that whipped through the streets of Chicago. At 26, she carried only a small, worn suitcase, and, in her womb, the promise of a new life that had been growing for 8 months. The baby's father had left 2 weeks ago, taking with him not only her savings, but also the dreams of a family she had carefully built in her mind. The temporary shelter where she had managed to get a spot was 3 blocks away. But Mariana needed to walk slowly, stopping from time to rest. The Braxton Hicks contractions had become more frequent, reminding her that the baby could arrive at any moment. She looked around and saw the store windows decorated for Christmas, families strolling hand in hand, children pointing at the toys on display. Everything seemed to conspire to remind her of what she didn't have: a family, security, a home. Just 9 miles away, Arthur Sterling observed the city through the broad glass windows of his office on the 40th floor. At 40, he commanded a tech empire worth billions. But his professional success couldn't fill the void he had carried since the tragedy that had destroyed his family 5 years earlier. The car accident that took his wife, Helena, and young Gabriel still haunted him every night, especially during Christmas. Mr. Sterling, the voice of Regina, his personal assistant for over 10 years, brought him back to the present. The benefit event tonight. Do you still intend to cancel your participation? Arthur sighed, running a hand through his dark hair, already streaked with gray. Regina, you know how I feel about Christmas, especially events with children. Sir, with all due respect, Regina approached, holding a folder against her chest. Perhaps that's exactly why you should go. St. Jude's Children's Hospital depends on your foundation. The children, they need to see that there is still hope in the world. Arthur stared at Regina for a long moment. The 50-year-old woman had been more than an assistant. She had been a friend in the most difficult moments, when he had almost given up on everything. He knew she was concerned about his growing isolation, especially during the holiday season. 1 hour only, he finally conceded. I'll make an appearance, greet some people, and go home. That same afternoon, as Mariana arranged her few clothes in the small closet of the shelter, she received an unexpected visit. Sister Mary, the coordinator, approached her bed with a gentle smile. Mariana, dear, we have a special opportunity tonight. St. Jude's Hospital is hosting a Christmas dinner for mothers in vulnerable situations. There's free transportation, and you could meet other women who have gone through similar situations. Mariana hesitated. She didn't feel comfortable being seen as a charity case, but the loneliness was becoming unbearable. Besides, maybe it would be good for the baby to get out a little, breathe some different air. All right, she agreed quietly, but can I come back if I don't feel well? Of course, dear. The van will be here at 7. At 8 o'clock that evening, Arthur Sterling entered the main lobby of St. Jude's Hospital, impeccable in his Italian suit and the haughty posture that kept people at a respectful distance. The room was decorated with soft Christmas lights, and a large decorated tree occupied the center of the hall. Children ran among the adults, their laughter echoing through the walls. The tightness in his chest was immediate. Gabriel would be 11 years old today. Forcing a perfunctory smile, Arthur greeted doctors, nurses, and other benefactors. He posed for some photos, signed checks, and uttered the appropriate words about the importance of charity during the holidays. But his eyes constantly sought the exit. That's when he saw her. In the farthest corner of the room, sitting alone in a chair near the window, was a visibly pregnant young woman. She wore a simple navy blue dress, and her hands rested protectively on her prominent belly. There was something in her posture, the way she held her shoulders straight despite her evident exhaustion, the way she watched the other people with a mixture of affection and melancholy, that touched something dormant in Arthur. She was alone, completely alone on Christmas night. Mariana felt the contractions increase in intensity and frequency. She tried to focus on the conversations around her, on the stories of overcoming adversity that she heard, but the pain was getting more intense. She didn't want to draw attention or worry anyone, so she remained seated, breathing deeply as she had learned in the few prenatal appointments she had managed to make. It was then that she noticed someone standing before her. She looked up and met the most intense gaze she had ever seen, dark as night but carrying a depth of pain that she immediately recognized. He was an elegant man, clearly important by the way people around him looked at him with reverence. "Excuse me." His voice was deep, controlled. "Are you all right?" Before Mariana could answer, a stronger contraction hit her, causing her to bend slightly and let out an involuntary groan. Her hands tightened over her belly, and she knew with absolute certainty that this was no longer a false alarm. The baby was coming, and she was alone in the world, except for the presence of that unknown man whose eyes reflected a loneliness as deep as her own. I think it's time," Mariana whispered, her eyes wide with fear as another contraction surged through her like an intense wave. Her hands trembled, and she could feel the panic rising in her throat. Arthur Sterling, a man accustomed to making multi-million-dollar decisions in seconds, felt momentarily paralyzed. The vulnerability in those brown eyes instantly transported him back 5 years, when Helena held his hand in the maternity ward, radiant with happiness as they awaited Gabriel's birth. "Where's your family, your husband?" The question came out harsher than he intended, an automatic defense against the emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. Mariana lowered her eyes, shame coloring her cheeks. I don't have any. It's just me." The admission hit Arthur like a punch to the gut. He looked around the crowded hall, people laughing and celebrating, completely oblivious to the drama unfolding in the isolated corner where they stood. "Regina!" His voice cut through the air with authority. His assistant appeared instantly, followed by a nurse who had noticed the commotion. "Mr. Sterling?" Regina looked from her boss to Mariana, immediately understanding the situation. "Get my car ready now!" Arthur bent down slightly, extending his hand to Mariana. "I'm going to take you to the hospital." "No, I can't accept." Mariana tried to get up on her own, but another contraction made her stumble. "You don't even know me. I don't want to be a burden to—" "You're not a burden." The words came out with a conviction that surprised Arthur himself. No one should go through this alone. During the drive in the armored Mercedes, the silence was punctuated only by Mariana's muffled groans and the instructions Arthur gave to the driver. He maintained a respectful distance, but his eyes constantly returned to her reflection in the window glass. There was an inner strength in that woman that intrigued him. Even amidst pain and helplessness, she tried to maintain her composure. "What's your name?" Arthur asked softly. "Mariana. Mariana Varela." She took a deep breath between contractions. "And you're Arthur Sterling, aren't you? I've seen your picture in the papers." Arthur nodded, surprised she recognized him. Most people in her situation would be more concerned with their own condition than with identifying billionaires. "Mariana is a beautiful name," he said, and immediately rebuked himself internally. Why was he trying to comfort her? Why couldn't he just leave her at the hospital and go? At Northwestern Memorial Hospital, the best private hospital in the city, Arthur watched Mariana being wheeled down the corridors in a wheelchair. She turned once to look at him, her eyes expressing a gratitude that made him uncomfortable. He wasn't used to being seen as a savior. His wealth had isolated him from situations where he could truly make a difference in someone's life. "Mr. Sterling," the obstetrician Dr. Evans approached him in the waiting room. "The patient is in active labor. It should be a matter of a few hours. She doesn't have health insurance, but I assume you provide everything she needs. Private room, best medical team." Arthur interrupted, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that betrayed his inner turmoil. "Of course, sir. There's one more thing." The doctor hesitated. "She's asking about her family. She seems to think you're a relative, or..." "We're not family," Arthur said quickly, perhaps too quickly. "I just was in the right place at the right time." But even as he spoke, he knew it wasn't the whole truth. There was something about Mariana that awakened a protective instinct that he thought was dead and buried, along with Helena and Gabriel. The hours dragged on. Arthur called Regina, cancelling all his appointments for the next day. He walked the halls of the hospital, the sounds and smells constantly transporting him to memories he preferred to keep buried. Several times he wanted to leave, but something kept him there. When the first rays of sunlight of December 25th began to enter the windows of the maternity ward, Arthur heard the cry of a newborn echoing through the halls. His heart skipped a beat, and he knew, without anyone needing to tell him, that Mariana had given birth. Dr. Evans appeared with a tired smile. "It's a girl, healthy and strong, just like her mother. They're both fine." Arthur felt a relief he hadn't expected. Can I see them?" "She's asking for you." The private room was bathed in the golden light of the Christmas morning. Mariana, with her hair loose over her shoulders and an exhaustion that couldn't mask the sparkle in her eyes, held a small bundle in her arms. When she saw Arthur, her face lit up with a smile that felt like a punch to the chest. "She was born on Christmas," Mariana said softly, her voice full of emotion. "It's a miracle." Arthur approached slowly, as if fearing to break the moment. The baby was small and perfect, with a dark head of hair and clenched fists. Something inside him broke and reconnected simultaneously. "Thank you," Mariana continued, her eyes tearing up. "Without you, I don't know what would have happened. I don't know how I can repay you." "You don't have to repay me anything." Arthur swallowed hard. The instinct to run away was at war with an inexplicable need to protect that woman and the child. "What are you going to do now?" The question hung in the air like a shadow over the joy of the moment. Mariana looked at her daughter, then back at Arthur, and he saw the raw reality settling in her eyes. She had nowhere to go. She had no resources. She had no family. "I'll figure it out," she said, but the uncertainty in her voice betrayed her words. Arthur looked out the window, watching the city of Chicago awaken to another Christmas. Families gathering, presents being opened, tables being set. And there, in that hospital room, were two people completely alone in the world. A woman without resources, and a child who had just entered the world, and himself, a man who had sworn never to allow himself to love or be responsible for another person's happiness again. "Mariana," he said, surprised by the decision that was forming in his mind. "You and the baby. You can't go back to a shelter, not like this." She looked at him with expectation and fear at the same time. "Come with me, to my house, at least until you fully recovered and decided what you want to do." The silence that followed was laden with possibilities and dangers that neither was prepared to face. Arthur Sterling's mansion in Lincoln Park looked like something out of an architectural magazine. Mariana held little Sophia, a name they had chosen together at the hospital, tighter to her chest as she gazed at the immaculate gardens, the crystal-clear swimming pool, and the large glass windows that revealed a minimalist and sophisticated decor. Everything there exuded luxury and solitude. "Mrs. Davison will help you with everything you need," Arthur said, introducing a 60-year-old woman who was waiting for them at the main entrance. The housekeeper smiled warmly at Mariana, but her eyes revealed a poorly disguised curiosity. We've prepared the blue room on the second floor. It overlooks the garden and is far from my office, so the baby can cry as much as she likes." The formality in Arthur's voice contrasted with the kindness of the gesture. Since leaving the hospital, he had maintained a respectful distance, as if wanting to make it clear that this was just a temporary arrangement driven by compassion. "I don't know how to thank you," Mariana murmured, still in awe of the grandeur of the place. "I never imagined houses like this existed." "It's too big for one person," Arthur admitted, a shadow passing over his eyes. "It always has been." The room assigned to her was larger than the entire apartment where she lived before losing everything. A king-size bed occupied the center, flanked by elegant wooden nightstands. A comfortable armchair had been positioned near the window, and next to it, a brand-new crib awaited Sophia. Mariana felt her eyes filled with tears. "The crib," she began. "Regina took care of it last night," Arthur explained, avoiding her gaze. "I thought it would be necessary." In the following days, an odd routine was established. Arthur left early for the office and returned in the late afternoon, always politely asking if Mariana and the baby needed anything. She, in turn, tried to make herself as invisible as possible, confining herself to the room and the small adjacent terrace where she nursed Sophia while watching the city's activity below. It was Mrs. Davison who broke the ice in the first week. "It's been 5 years since I've seen this man truly smile," the housekeeper commented while helping Mariana bathe Sophia. "Since he lost his family." Mariana looked up, surprised. Arthur had never mentioned a family of his own. "His wife and son," Mrs. Davison continued, lowering her voice as if sharing a sacred secret. "Car accident on Christmas Eve of 2019. Helena was pregnant with their second child. He lost all 3 at once." Mariana's heart clenched. Suddenly, the deep sadness she saw in Arthur's eyes, his aversion to Christmas, his empty mansion, it all made sense. She understood why he had helped her, why he couldn't abandon her alone in the hospital. She and Sophia represented some kind of unconscious redemption for him. "That's why he hates this time of year," Mrs. Davison sighed. "He can barely stay home during December." This year was the first time in 5 years that he didn't travel overseas just to escape the festivities. That night, when Arthur returned from work, Mariana was waiting for him in the living room. Sophia slept peacefully in her arms, her little fists relaxed on the pink blanket. "Need anything?" Arthur asked, but for the first time he stopped completely, without his usual haste. "I want to tell you about Sophia's father," Mariana said softly. "I think you have the right to know why I was alone that night." Arthur hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the intimacy the conversation suggested. But something in her gaze encouraged her to continue. "I met Ricardo in college. I was studying education on a full scholarship, working 3 shifts to support myself. He seemed different from the other guys, more mature, responsible." Mariana stroked Sophia's little face. "When I found out I was pregnant, he was excited. He said he wanted to get married, start a family. He convinced me to quit my job, to move into his apartment." Arthur sat down in the armchair across from the sofa, for the first time paying full attention to her story. 2 weeks before the baby was due, I found out he had another family, a wife in Denver, 2 small children. I was just a pastime." Mariana's voice trembled slightly. "He took my savings, everything I had saved for Sophia's layette, and disappeared. Left a note saying I had to sort it out myself." The silence that followed was filled with a mutual understanding that neither expected. 2 hearts broken by different abandonments, 2 people carrying pain that the outside world couldn't see. "I'm so sorry," Arthur said finally, his voice softer than she had ever heard. "Mrs. Davison told me about your family," Mariana confessed, watching his reaction. "About Helena and Gabriel." Arthur stiffened instantly, the barrier rising again in his eyes. "She shouldn't have." "I understand now why you helped me," Mariana continued gently, "and I understand why this is difficult for you. Having a pregnant woman, a baby in the house. It must bring back painful memories. Arthur stood up abruptly, walking to the window. "You don't understand anything," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Then explain it to me." For a long moment he remained with his back to her, looking out at the gardens illuminated by the moonlight. When he finally spoke, his voice was laden with a vulnerability that she didn't imagine he possessed. "I was taking them to Christmas dinner at my parents' house. Helena was radiant, Gabriel singing Christmas carols in the back seat. It was 7:30 at night when a drunk driver..." He paused, his hands clenching into fists. "In a matter of seconds, I lost everything that mattered in my life." Mariana felt tears rolling down her face. "Arthur, I swore that night that I would never allow myself to love someone like that again, that I would never again be responsible for another person's happiness." He turned to her, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "And now you're here, and I..." He didn't finish the sentence, but Mariana understood. He was becoming attached to them, against all his resistance, against all the promises he had made to himself. And that terrified him as much as it did her. Sophia chose that moment to open her little eyes and let out a small whimper. Mariana started to get up, but Arthur approached first. "May I?" he asked hesitantly. Mariana handed him the baby, watching as Arthur held Sophia with a tenderness that completely contradicted the hardness he tried to maintain. The child calmed instantly in his arms, as if recognizing the safety he offered. "She's lucky to have you as a mother," Arthur murmured, not taking his eyes off Sophia's little face. "And we're both lucky to have you now," Mariana replied softly. The look they exchanged over the baby's head was laden with a dangerous intimacy, a recognition that something was changing between them, something that neither was prepared to face or name. In the third week of January, when the Chicago winter was at its peak, Sophia developed a high fever that wouldn't break with any children's medicine. Mariana spent the night walking the room with the baby in her arms, trying to soothe her while the thermometer read 102.6 degrees Fahrenheit. It was 4 in the morning when she decided to seek out Arthur. She had never gone to his room, religiously respecting the invisible boundaries he had established in the house. But desperation spoke louder than protocol. She found him awake in his office, still wearing the rumpled dress shirt from the day before, hunched over spreadsheets and reports. The desk lamp illuminated the deep circles under his tired eyes. "Arthur!" she called softly from the door, Sophia crying inconsolably in her arms. He looked up immediately, and the concern she saw there surprised her with its intensity. "She has a very high fever." "I don't know what else to do," Mariana said, trying to control the tremor in her voice. Arthur stood up in one swift motion, approaching them. He touched Sophia's forehead delicately, and his face hardened. "We're going to the hospital now." On the way to Northwestern Memorial Hospital, Arthur drove his own car with a controlled urgency that made Mariana realize how much he cared. She held Sophia against her chest, whispering words of comfort while silent tears streamed down her face. "It's going to be okay," Arthur said, looking in the rearview mirror. "Dr. Evans is one of the best pediatricians in the city. Sophia is a strong girl." The way he said his daughter's name, with familiarity and affection, made Mariana's heart clench in a completely new way. In the pediatric emergency room, Arthur took control of the situation with the authority of someone accustomed to resolving crises. In a matter of minutes, Sophia was being examined by the best medical team in the hospital. The diagnosis was alarming. Infant pneumonia, common in babies of a few weeks old, but which would require immediate hospitalization. "She needs to stay here for at least a week," Dr. Evans explained. "It's a delicate condition, but treatable. You got here in time." Mariana broke down. All the accumulated stress of the past few weeks, the insecurity of her situation, the fear of losing the only thing that really mattered in her life, it all came to the surface in sobs that she couldn't control. That's when she felt strong arms enveloping her. Arthur pulled her against his chest, one hand stroking her hair while murmuring words of comfort. She's going to be all right, Mariana. I promise you, she's going to be all right. For the first time since they met, the barriers between them simply disappeared. Mariana allowed herself to receive the comfort he offered, while Arthur allowed himself to offer the care he had sworn never to give to anyone again. I can't lose her, Mariana whispered against his chest. She's all I have. You're not going to lose her, Arthur replied with steely conviction. And you're not alone in this. The next 7 days in the hospital created an intimacy between them that no social protocol could have generated. Arthur cancelled all important meetings and practically set up a makeshift office in the private room where Sophia was hospitalized. He took turns with Mariana in the care, holding the baby when she needed to rest, making her laugh when despair threatened to consume her. On the 5th night, when Mariana finally managed to sleep after 3 days practically without sleep, Arthur remained awake beside the hospital crib. Sophia, already better but still fragile, held his pinky finger with surprising strength. "You remind me so much of him," Arthur murmured softly, knowing that Mariana couldn't hear him. "Gabriel had that same determination, that same strength. You're going to grow up and be an amazing girl, just like your mother." It was at that moment that he admitted to himself the truth he had been denying. He loved that child as if she were his own daughter, and even worse, he was hopelessly in love with Mariana. The realization hit him like a lightning bolt. For 5 years he had convinced himself that he was incapable of loving again, that his heart had been buried along with Helena and Gabriel. But there, in that hospital room, watching Sophia sleep and Mariana rest in the armchair next to her, he knew he had been completely wrong. When Sophia was discharged, the dynamic in the mansion changed drastically. Arthur could no longer maintain the formal distance. He came home eager to see how they had spent the day, dined with Mariana instead of isolating himself in the office, and spent the evenings helping with the baby's care. "You don't have to do this," Mariana protested one night when she saw him preparing a bottle at 2 in the morning. "I know you have important meetings early tomorrow." "There's nothing more important than this," Arthur replied, testing the milk temperature on his wrist with a gesture that had become natural. The look they exchanged was laden with a growing desire that neither knew how to handle. Mariana, in her simple pajamas, her hair loose on her shoulders, was more beautiful to him than any sophisticated woman he had ever known. Arthur, with his shirt unbuttoned and his hair tousled, caring for Sophia with infinite tenderness, made her heart beat erratically. "Mariana," he began, approaching her with the bottle in his hands. "I know," she sighed, picking Sophia up. "This is getting complicated, isn't it?" "Very complicated," he agreed, but his eyes didn't leave her face. "What are we going to do?" Arthur reached out, gently touching her face. "I don't know. I just know that I can't imagine this house without you two anymore." Mariana closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. "Arthur, Daddy! Mommy!" Sophia chose exactly that moment to utter her first clearest babbles, causing them both to pull away abruptly. They looked at each other with a mixture of shock and tenderness. The baby, obviously, wasn't really talking yet, but the coincidence was devastating for both. "She doesn't know what she's saying," Mariana murmured, blushing intensely. "Of course not," Arthur agreed, but something in his eyes suggested that a part of him wished Sophia knew exactly what she was saying. That same night, on the other side of the city, Regina Sterling, Arthur's cousin and vice president of Sterling Tech, received a phone call that would change everything. "Ms. Sterling, this is Paul Mendez from the Chicago Sun-Times. I have some interesting information about your cousin Arthur and a certain young woman who's living in his mansion. A single mother, from what I've been told, with a newborn baby." Regina felt her blood run cold. Arthur was heir to a billion-dollar empire, and she was in the line of succession. Any woman in his life represented a threat to her own interests. "How much do you want to keep this information out of the papers?" she asked coldly. "Actually, ma'am, I have a better proposal. How about I publish the story, but from an angle that's beneficial to all of us? While Regina plotted the destruction of the happiness that Arthur had finally found at the mansion in Lincoln Park, he and Mariana faced a truth they could no longer deny. They were in love. And that, in their world of social differences and family expectations, was the most dangerous thing that could have happened. 3 weeks after Sophia's hospitalization, Arthur finally yielded to what he had been building towards for months. It was on a Sunday afternoon, when Mariana was singing softly to the baby in the garden, that he could no longer resist. He approached from behind, wrapped her in his arms, and when she turned around surprised, he kissed her with all the pent-up passion he carried. "I tried to resist," he murmured against her lips. "God knows how I tried, but you and Sophia, you've become my family." Mariana returned the kiss with equal intensity, all barriers finally crumbling. "I tried not to fall in love with you too. I thought it was just gratitude, but it's much more than that." From that moment on, they became secret lovers within their own home. Arthur installed an intercom in Mariana's room, officially for emergencies with the baby, but which they used for intimate conversations in the middle of the night. He cancelled appointments to have lunch at home, making excuses to Mrs. Davison when they spent hours locked in his office while Sophia slept. "This has to stay between us for now," Arthur whispered one night, after they made love for the first time. "My family, the press, they wouldn't understand." Mariana agreed, but a seed of insecurity was planted. Why did he need to hide her? Was it shame of her humble origins or something deeper? The answer came brutally 2 weeks later. "Millionaire Arthur Sterling has secret affair with housekeeper," blared the front page of the society section of the Chicago Tribune. The photo, clearly taken with a telephoto lens, showed Arthur kissing Mariana in the garden of his home, while she held Sophia in her arms. Arthur was in a meeting when Regina burst into his office, throwing the newspaper on the table with violence. "Have you completely lost your mind?" Regina Sterling was a 45-year-old woman, elegant and ruthless, who had always considered Arthur more of a brother than a cousin. "A housekeeper, Arthur? With a bastard child from another man?" "She's not a housekeeper," Arthur replied coldly, but his heart skipped a beat at the sight of the headline. "And I won't allow you to talk about Mariana or Sophia like that." "Oh, so now you've even adopted the little bastard?" Regina laughed with disdain. "Arthur, you're the CEO of a publicly traded company. Your personal life affects shareholders, investors, our family reputation. You can't just shack up with any little tramp who shows up at your door." Arthur stood up abruptly, his fists clenched. "Watch what you say, Regina. Mariana is worth more than 100 women like you." "Women like me?" Regina raised an eyebrow. "Women from our social class? Women who aren't going to leave you penniless when they get tired of your money?" "Mariana doesn't want my money." "Of course not. She just appeared in your life pregnant and helpless, accepted being supported in your mansion, seduced you while you were vulnerable. But of course, it's pure love." Regina laughed cruelly. "Arthur, do you think I'm an idiot? I researched this woman. Do you know how many men she's been involved with in the past 2 years? Do you know that the child's father is married and she knew it all along? You're lying." Regina opened the folder she had brought with her, spreading photos and documents on the table. "Here's Ricardo Almeida, the bastard's father. Married for 10 years, 2 daughters in Denver. And here, look, WhatsApp conversations where your dear Mariana explicitly says that she doesn't care if he's married as long as he helps with the expenses." Arthur felt the ground collapse beneath his feet. The messages seemed authentic. The photos were undeniable. Did Mariana know Ricardo was married? "And there's more!" Regina continued relentlessly. 3 lawsuits for unpaid debts, a history of relationships with older and financially stable men. Your Cinderella has a pattern, cousin, and you were just another sucker on the list. Get out of my office, Arthur said in a dangerously low voice. I'm leaving, but remember, you have until the end of the week to get rid of her, or I'll take care of it myself. The Sterling family will not be destroyed by a 5th-rate con artist. At the mansion, Mariana held Sophia against her chest while watching Mrs. Davison pack her things with tears in her eyes. Mrs. Davison, what's going on? Mariana asked, despite already suspecting the answer. The housekeeper handed her the newspaper with trembling hands. 3 journalists arrived here this morning, asking about you, about the baby, about when your relationship with Dr. Arthur began. Mariana read the headline and felt nauseous. The article was even worse than the title, full of insinuations about her morality, speculations about how much money Arthur spent on her, and suggestions that Sophia might not be Ricardo's daughter, but the result of another self-serving relationship. They know you're not a housekeeper, Mrs. Davison continued, but their version of the story is terrible. They say you took advantage of Dr. Arthur's kindness, that you set him up to find you at the hospital. The house phone rang incessantly. Mariana recognized some numbers as belonging to media outlets. Her cell phone also didn't stop ringing. Unknown numbers, text messages asking if she confirmed the relationship with the billionaire. It was then that the message that really frightened her arrived. From an unknown number. Mariana, this is Ricardo. I saw the story about you and the rich guy. I need to see you. I have some interesting things to tell the press about our relationship. Either you pay me $50,000 to keep quiet, or I'll tell everyone that you always knew I was married and that you tried to blackmail me into leaving my family. You have 48 hours. Mariana slumped onto the armchair, Sophia in her arms, while tears of despair rolled down her face. Out of nowhere, her life had become a public nightmare, and worse. She knew that Arthur would arrive home at any moment, probably having seen the headlines, with questions she wouldn't know how to answer. Because Ricardo wasn't completely lying. She had found out about his family a few weeks before ending the relationship, but she was so in love and desperate that she pretended not to know. When he abandoned her, she really thought about seeking out his wife to tell her everything, not out of malice, but out of sheer desperation. Now, those partial truths would be twisted and used to destroy the only good thing that had happened in her life. The sound of Arthur's car arriving in the garage made her heart race. Sophia started to cry, as if sensing her mother's tension. Mariana looked around the mansion that had become her home, knowing that it might be the last time. Arthur entered the house with a grim expression, the newspaper under his arm and his cell phone ringing incessantly. When he saw Mariana in the living room, he stopped short. "We need to talk," he said, his voice icy in a way she had never heard before. His tone said everything Mariana needed to know. Arthur had believed the lies, or worse, he had discovered the truths she had tried to hide. "Sit down," Arthur said, his voice as sharp as ice. He threw the newspaper onto the coffee table, along with the folder Regina had left. "I want to hear it from you. The truth, Mariana. All of it." Mariana sat down slowly, Sophia still in her arms, feeling her legs trembling. The man in front of her was not the caring Arthur who had kissed her that morning, nor the tender lover who whispered sweet words in her ear. He was the ruthless tycoon, the CEO accustomed to exposing corporate lies. "Arthur, I can explain." "You can explain what? That you knew Ricardo was married?" He opened the folder, spreading out the printouts of the WhatsApp conversations. "That you told him you didn't care, as long as he helped with the expenses? Or can you explain your 3 lawsuits for debt and your history of relationships with older, wealthy men?" Each word was a stab. Mariana looked at the documents and felt the world collapse. The messages were out of context, but they were real. The lawsuits were for her adoptive mother's debts, but they existed. The history of relationships was a cruel distortion of two previous boyfriends, but contained enough fragments of truth to sound convincing. "You researched my life?" Mariana asked, her voice breaking. "Regina researched it, and thank God she did." Arthur stood up, running his hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. "Christ, Mariana, I opened my home, my heart, my life to you. I cared for Sophia as if she were my own daughter, and it was all just a charade." "It wasn't a charade." Mariana stood up abruptly, causing Sophia to start crying. "Arthur, those messages, they were taken out of context. Yes, I found out Ricardo was married, but it was only a few weeks before he abandoned me, and I was desperate, confused, desperate enough not to care about destroying a family. I never destroyed any family. He assured me that he was separated, that the divorce papers were already in motion. When I found out the truth, I broke up with him right away. But not before helping with the expenses, right?" The coldness in his voice hit her like a slap. "Do you really believe I'm a prostitute?" Arthur was silent for a moment too long, and that silence said everything. "My God," Mariana whispered, holding Sophia tighter. "You believe it? After everything we've been through together, after what we did last night, you really believe I'm a con artist?" "I don't know what to believe anymore," Arthur exploded. "You appeared in my life on Christmas Eve, pregnant and abandoned, at the exact moment when I was most vulnerable. You accepted living in my house. You accepted me paying for everything for you and the baby. And now I find out that you have a history of doing exactly that with other men." "What other men?" Mariana shouted back, tears streaming freely. "I dated 2 men in my life before Ricardo. 2! And none of them supported me or gave me money. And the lawsuits for debt? They're from my adoptive mother. She died leaving debts that fell on my name because I was the only relative. I was paying it off in installments until I lost everything when Ricardo robbed me." Arthur seemed to hesitate for a moment, but his cell phone rang at that moment. It was Regina. "Arthur, I hope you've come to your senses, because I just received a call from Ricardo Almeida. He wants $50,000 to not tell the press that your darling always knew he was married, and even tried to blackmail him into leaving his family. If you don't get rid of her by tomorrow, he's going to give interviews to every newspaper in the country." Mariana heard every word. The speakerphone was on, and Regina didn't care about being discreet. She saw Arthur's face closing up even more, the last spark of doubt extinguishing in his eyes. "Is it true?" Arthur asked, hanging up the phone. "Did you try to blackmail Ricardo into leaving his family?" I was desperate, alone, pregnant, without money. I thought about looking for his wife, yes, but to tell the truth, not to blackmail. And in the end, I didn't even do it. But you thought about it. You thought about destroying an innocent family to solve your problems." Mariana closed her eyes, knowing she had lost. It didn't matter the context. It didn't matter the despair she felt at the time. It didn't matter that she had never really done anything. In Arthur's head, she was condemned. "I want you to get out of my house," Arthur said with a coldness that chilled her to the bone. "Arthur, please." "Now, Mariana, Regina will provide an apartment for you until you can get settled. I'll have $100,000 transferred to your account. It should be enough for you to start your life over. You're buying me off, paying me to get out of your life. I'm trying to be generous with someone who made a fool of me for months." Mariana felt something die inside her. The man who held Sophia in his arms every night, who sang softly to the baby to sleep, who kissed her as if she were the most precious thing in the world, that man had completely disappeared. "And Sophia?" she asked, her voice almost inaudible. "Don't you even want to say goodbye to her?" Arthur looked at the baby, and for a moment his mask of coldness wavered. Sophia had stopped crying and was looking at him with those dark little eyes that melted him every night. "Sophia is not my daughter," he said, but his voice cracked on the last word. "And you made it clear that I'm not your family." "I never said that." "You didn't need to say it. Your actions spoke for you." Mrs. Davison appeared in the doorway, her face swollen from crying. "Dr. Arthur, Miss Mariana's bags are ready. The driver is waiting." Mariana looked around the room where she had been happy for the first time in her adult life, where Arthur had taught her to trust again, where Sophia had given her first smiles, where they had become an improvised but true family. "I love you," she said softly, a last attempt. "And I know you love me too. Don't let them destroy this." Arthur turned his back to her. "Love isn't built on lies, Mariana. And trust isn't destroyed by half-truths and gossip, Arthur." He didn't answer. Mariana kissed Sophia on the forehead and walked toward the door. In the doorway, she turned one last time. "When you discover the truth, and you will discover it, remember what you're throwing away today. Remember that Sophia called you Daddy. Remember how I looked at you. And ask yourself if $50,000 was worth losing a family." The door closed behind her with a definitive sound. Arthur was left alone in the room, surrounded by slanderous newspapers and documents that perhaps didn't tell the whole story. Sophia could still feel Mariana's soft perfume in the air, hear the echo of her voice calling his name. For the first time in 5 years, the mansion returned to being exactly what it had always been: a gilded prison for a man who had forgotten how to trust, how to forgive, how to fight for love. Outside, Mariana got into the car with Sophia in her arms, knowing that she would never be the same. The man who had saved her had become the one who had completely destroyed her. And the worst part was knowing that somewhere deep down in his heart, he knew he was making the biggest mistake of his life. But sometimes, pride speaks louder than love. And sometimes when you finally realize your mistake, it's too late to fix the damage. 2 weeks had passed since Mariana left the mansion. The small apartment that Regina had provided in the little village neighborhood was clean and functional, but the comparison to the house where she had been happy was inevitable and painful. Sophia seemed to feel the change. She cried more, slept less, as if she also missed Arthur's strong arms. Mariana tried to rebuild her life. She used part of the money that Arthur had transferred to pay off some outstanding debts and looked for a job, but the media exposure had made everything more difficult. 3 interviews were cancelled after the employers recognized her from the newspaper headlines. It was Mrs. Davison who appeared at her door on a rainy February afternoon, with red eyes and a determined expression. "Ms. Mariana, I need to tell you some things," the housekeeper said, as soon as Mariana let her in. "I can't stay quiet any longer seeing this injustice. Mrs. Davison, you shouldn't be here. If Arthur finds out..." "Dr. Arthur is destroyed, girl. He doesn't eat right. He doesn't sleep. He spends the nights in the room that used to be yours, sitting in the armchair where you used to breastfeed Sophia." Mrs. Davison took Mariana's hands. "But he's too proud to admit that he made a terrible mistake." Mariana felt her heart clench. "Then why are you here? Because I know who set up this whole situation. And you need to know too." Mrs. Davison opened her purse and took out several papers. "Ms. Regina paid that man, Ricardo, to make up stories about you. I heard her on the phone last night." "What?" "She offered him $100,000 to tell that version of the facts. That you knew he was married, that you tried to blackmail him. All lies to destroy you two." Mariana sat down heavily on the sofa, Sophia sleeping in her arms. "But the cell phone messages, fake, or at least taken out of context and modified. Regina has contacts with people who do that kind of thing." Mrs. Davison handed her one of the papers. "I got a recording. She's talking to someone about editing the conversations to make them look more compromising." Mariana's heart began to beat faster. Why would Regina do this? Money, power, envy. You need to understand. Regina always hoped that Dr. Arthur would never marry again. She's second in line to inherit the company. If he dies without heirs, she inherits everything. But if he marries and has children, she loses the inheritance, Mariana completed, finally understanding the dimension of the conspiracy against her. Exactly. And even worse if he officially adopts Sophia, as he was planning to do. He was going to adopt Sophia? Mrs. Davison smiled sadly. Girl, he had already contacted a lawyer. He had already started the paperwork. He was planning to propose to you on your birthday next month. He had a ring made to order with Sophia's name engraved next to yours. Mariana burst into tears. Arthur really loved her, wanted to officially make them his family, and Regina had destroyed all of that with elaborate lies. But I need concrete evidence, Mariana said, wiping away her tears. Arthur will never believe just my word after everything that happened. I brought everything I could. Mrs. Davison handed her a thick envelope. Phone recordings, emails that Regina forgot to delete, bank statements showing the payments to Ricardo. But there's more. More what? Ricardo is sorry. His conscience is weighing on him. Regina promised him more money if he gave an interview confirming the lies, but he's scared. His wife found out about the payment and threatened to leave him if he continues to lie. Mariana stood up, a new determination born in her chest. Where can I find Ricardo? Be careful, girl. If Regina knows you're investigating, leave Regina to me. She messed with the wrong person. The next morning, Mariana left Sophia with a trusted neighbor and went to the construction site where Ricardo worked as an engineer. He saw her coming and tried to hide, but she was faster. We need to talk, Ricardo, now. Mariana, I can't. If she finds out I talk to you, you're going to talk to me, or I'm going to go look for your wife myself and tell her that you accepted $100,000 to lie about our relationship. Mariana stared at him with a determination he didn't know she possessed. You choose. They sat down at a nearby cafe, Ricardo visibly nervous, constantly looking over his shoulder. It was Regina Sterling who contacted you, wasn't it? Mariana got straight to the point. Ricardo sighed deeply. How did you know? That doesn't matter. What matters is you tell me exactly what she asked you to do and how much she paid you for it. Mariana, she said that you were taking advantage of her cousin, that you were a con artist. I thought I was doing the right thing. Lying about our relationship, saying that I knew you were married from the beginning, that's doing the right thing. You did know, Ricardo exploded, attracting the attention of other customers. He lowered his voice quickly. You found out and didn't break up with me right away. I found out 2 weeks before you abandoned me. And do you know why I didn't break up? Because I was in love and desperate. Because you had convinced me to leave my job, to trust you. I was pregnant and scared. Mariana leaned forward. But I never tried to blackmail you into leaving your family. That was Regina's invention. Ricardo lowered his eyes, clearly ashamed. She has recordings of us, edited recordings, cut and pasted to make them look like what she wanted. Mariana pulled out her cell phone. I'm recording our conversation now, Ricardo, so think carefully before you lie again. Do you want your wife to hear you confessing that you accepted money to destroy an innocent family? Stop it! Ricardo ran a hand over his face. My wife is already suspicious. If she finds out everything, I'll lose my kids. Then help me fix this situation. Help me prove to Arthur that he was deceived. How? You're going to tell the truth, all of it, to Arthur, to the newspapers, to whoever it takes. Mariana stood up. And you're going to return that dirty money that Regina paid you? What if she sues me? Leave Regina to me. That same afternoon, Mariana went to Sterling Tech headquarters. She didn't want to confront Arthur yet. She needed to disarm Regina completely first. She used all her charms with the receptionist to get an urgent meeting with the vice president. Regina greeted her with a false and condescending smile. Mariana, what a unpleasant surprise. I hope you're enjoying the apartment. Consider it a parting gift. I came here to give you an opportunity, Mariana said calmly, sitting down without being invited. Opportunity? Regina laughed. Honey, you don't have anything I want. Mariana pulled out her cell phone and pressed play. Regina's voice echoed in the room. Edit those messages to make them look more compromising. It needs to be very clear that she knew he was married from the beginning. The smile disappeared from Regina's face. "I have 3 more hours of recordings," Mariana continued calmly. "Bank statements of the payments to Ricardo, emails of yours organizing the whole charade." She leaned forward. "And the question is, would you rather resign discreetly from the vice presidency, or would you prefer that I hand all of this over to the press?" Regina stood up abruptly, her face contorted with hatred. "You bitch! You don't know who you're messing with." "I know exactly who I'm messing with a desperate woman who destroyed the happiness of an entire family out of greed." Mariana also stood up. "You have 24 hours to tell Arthur the truth. If you don't, I will. And why would I do that? Because if you tell him, maybe I won't hand the recordings over to the district attorney. Conspiracy, forgery of documents, slander. You could get 3 to 5 years in prison." Mariana left the room, leaving Regina ranting alone. She knew she had declared war, but she didn't care. She had regained her strength, her determination, and now she had the weapons necessary to fight for the man she loved and the family that Regina had tried to destroy. The final confrontation was approaching, and this time she would not be the helpless victim. She would be the warrior fighting for her love. Arthur Sterling was in his office at the mansion when Regina burst through the door, her face livid with anger and despair. It was almost midnight on a Thursday, and he had spent another sleepless night, trying to work to avoid thinking about Mariana and Sophia. "We need to talk," Regina said, closing the door behind her. "Regina, it's not time for—" "She has recordings, Arthur. Recordings of us, bank statements, everything." Regina collapsed into an armchair, her elegant composure completely destroyed. "Mariana found out everything, and she's blackmailing me." Arthur looked up from the papers, frowning. "What are you talking about?" "The evidence against her. Some of it may have been exaggerated." "Exaggerated how?" Regina avoided his gaze. "The WhatsApp conversations were edited, and I paid Ricardo to confirm certain versions of the facts." The silence that followed was deafening. Arthur stood up slowly, his face going through various shades of disbelief, anger, and comprehension. "You lied to me." His voice was dangerously low. "You fabricated false evidence against Mariana. I was protecting you. That woman is an opportunist, Arthur. It may not be exactly as I said, but still—" "Shut up!" Arthur exploded with a fury that Regina had never seen. "You destroyed my life. You destroyed my family. Why? Because you're my cousin, my best friend, and I wasn't going to let any tramp take advantage of you." "Lies!" Arthur walked up to her, his fists clenched. "It was for money, wasn't it? Out of fear of losing the inheritance if I married and had children." Regina didn't answer, but her eyes confirmed everything. "Get out of my house," Arthur said in an icy voice. "Get out of my house and never set foot here again. Tomorrow, you're going to resign from the vice presidency. You're going to publicly tell what you did, and you're going to return every penny you paid Ricardo." "Arthur, please, get out!" After Regina left, Arthur stood in the middle of the office, his hands trembling with anger and remorse. Mariana had tried to explain, had begged him to believe her, and he had kicked her out of his house based on lies fabricated by his own cousin. He grabbed the car keys and drove out into the Chicago night. The apartment in Little Village was dark when Arthur rang the doorbell. It was 2 in the morning, but he couldn't wait until dawn. He heard Sophia crying inside and the sound of Mariana's footsteps approaching. "Arthur?" Her voice on the other side of the door was a mixture of surprise and caution. "Mariana, please open the door. I need to talk to you." She opened it slowly, Sophia in her arms, her eyes red from crying. She was wearing simple pajamas, and her hair was disheveled, but to Arthur, she had never looked as beautiful as she did at that moment. "Regina told me everything," he said without preamble. "The lies, the false recordings, the money she paid Ricardo. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for having doubted you, for having believed the slander, for having sent you away." Mariana stared at him for a long moment, silent tears streaming down her face. "You kicked me out of your house, Arthur. You called me a con artist, A liar. You doubted my love, my character, everything we've lived together. I know. And I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I need you to know that not a day, not an hour, has passed without me missing you two. Arthur took a step closer. The house is empty without you. My life is empty without you. Sophia had stopped crying and was looking at him with those dark little eyes that melted him. She reached out her arms to him, and Arthur felt his heart break. "May I?" he asked. Mariana hesitated, but handed the baby to him. Sophia immediately calmed down completely, nestling against his chest as if they had never been separated. "She missed you," Mariana said softly. "Every night she woke up crying, and I knew she was looking for you." "And you? Did you miss me?" Mariana closed her eyes, more tears streaming down. "Every day, every night. Even knowing that you had doubted me, even with all the pain, I never stopped loving you." Arthur held Sophia with one arm and extended his free hand to Mariana. "Come home. Come back to me, please. How can I trust you again? The next time someone comes with lies about me, how do I know you won't believe them? Because now I know what it's like to lose you. I know what it's like to wake up in an empty house, knowing that I made the biggest mistake of my life." Arthur cupped her face with his free hand. "Mariana, you and Sophia are my family. You are my life. And I will spend the rest of my days proving that to you. Arthur, let me prove it. Let me show you that I've learned my lesson." He knelt right there in the small hallway of the apartment, still holding Sophia in his arms. "Marry me, Mariana. Let me officially adopt Sophia. Let me give you two everything you've always dreamed of. Not money or luxury, but love, family, security. Are you proposing?" Mrs. Davison's voice came from the stairs. The housekeeper had arrived at the exact moment, as if she were part of a plan. "Because if you are, there's a little something here that you forgot." She extended a small velvet box. Arthur smiled through his tears. "Mrs. Davison always knows where to find me," he said to Mariana, opening the box to reveal a dazzling ring. "I had it made especially for you. Look at the engraving inside." Mariana read the words engraved inside the ring: "Arthur, Mariana, and Sophia, forever." "He already ordered it before everything happened," Mrs. Davison explained. "And even after you separated, he never cancelled the order." Mariana looked at Arthur, still kneeling in the hallway, holding her daughter as if she were the most precious treasure in the world. She saw in his eyes the same vulnerability that had won her over on their first night, the same tenderness that had made her fall in love. But now she also saw something more: humility, genuine remorse, and a love so deep that it had survived the lies and the pride. "If I say yes," she said softly, "do you promise you'll never send me away again, even if the whole world is against us? I promise I'll fight for us. I promise I'll trust you. I promise that whatever happens, we'll face it together." Arthur took her hand. "And I promise that Sophia will grow up knowing that she is loved by a father who chose her, not by chance, but out of love." "Then yes," Mariana said, smiling through her tears. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'm coming home. Yes to everything." Arthur put the ring on her finger and stood up, enveloping her and Sophia in his arms. For the first time in weeks, the three of them were complete again. "Now you're going to have to put up with me forever," Mrs. Davison grumbled, but she was smiling. "And I already warned you. I want to be a godmother at the wedding and Sophia's fake grandma." 6 months later, in the same church where Helena and Arthur had been married 15 years before, Mariana walked down the aisle in a simple but elegant dress. Sophia in her arms wearing a white dress that matched hers. There weren't hundreds of guests. There wasn't excessive pomp, just the people who really mattered. Mrs. Davison was crying in the front row, next to the few true friends Arthur possessed. Regina had resigned publicly, returned the money, and moved to another state. Ricardo had given an interview telling the truth and offering public apologies. When the priest asked if Arthur took Mariana as his wife, he replied, "I take her and our daughter Sophia to form the family I always dreamed of." And when he asked if Mariana took Arthur, she looked into the eyes of the man who had saved her, lost her, and won her back, and said, "I do forever." At the moment they kissed, Sophia clapped her hands and shouted, "Daddy, Mommy," with the clarity of an exceptionally bright 8-month-old, making the entire church laugh and cry at the same time. 2 years later, Arthur Sterling, now Sterling Varela, watched from his desk in his home office as Mariana taught Sophia, now 2.5 years old, to ride a tricycle in the garden. Mariana was 6 months pregnant with their second child, radiant with happiness. "Daddy, come play!" Sophia shouted from the window, and Arthur needed no further invitation. He closed his laptop, went out to the garden, and picked up his daughter, spinning her around while Mariana laughed and held her belly. "Are you happy?" Mariana asked when he wrapped her in his arms too. "More than I ever imagined was possible," Arthur replied, kissing her first, then Sophia. "You saved me from a life without purpose. You gave me a real family. And you gave us a home," Mariana murmured against his lips. As the sun set over Chicago, the Sterling Varela family remained in the garden, complete and unbreakable, proof that true love can overcome any obstacle, any lie, any storm. The following Christmas would be the first that Arthur would celebrate with genuine joy in 6 years, because he had finally learned that family isn't just blood, it's choice, it's struggle, it's forgiveness, it's unconditional love that grows stronger with each challenge overcome. And in a city of millions, 3 hearts beat in perfect synchronicity, creating the most beautiful symphony of all, that of the true family.